Now for a counterpoint with a Republican member of the House Budget Committee here with me on set, Congressman Tim Moore of North Carolina, who also sits on the House Financial Services Committee. It's great to have you here.
Great to be with you, Kelly.
I don't mean to drop a bombshell, and maybe this isn't one to you, but 32 deficit hawks in the House, led by Lloyd Smucker, are warning your speaker that they will not back the bill finding $2 trillion in cuts. So there's a revolt. While we're hearing from your Democratic colleague about how there can't be these cuts to Medicaid and so forth, some of your Republican colleagues are saying this bill doesn't even go far enough in finding deficit cuts as they're making concessions to these demands. Where do you stand on all of this? And is this bill ever going to pass?
Well, I do believe it's going to pass, and I think there are certainly strong opinions on both sides. But what I have to say is if we do not pass the extension of the Trump tax cut, to your point earlier, roughly 80% of the people in the country are going to have a massive tax increase that's going to happen. The other thing that this bill does beyond that is it also invests in American energy. Let's not forget, for 4 years, when President Trump was in office, we were an energy exporter. Now we're an energy importer. We're counting on countries, many of whom, frankly, don't like us, for our source of energy. So we have to have energy independence. So I believe at the end of the day, on our side, at least on the Republican side, folks will get in line and will support the bill that comes out because they know how important it is.
What about what your Democratic colleague just said, capping some of the, for those who make over $1 million, and he said for billionaires that they get no continued relief? And it's not just from the left that we're hearing this talking point. Even the White House and some on the right have floated the idea of taxing high earners in order to help offset the effects of extending tax cuts for everybody else.
Well, look, we already have a very regressive tax system in the United States, and I think, frankly, tax fairness is what we should go for in that. So I think lowering the tax burden of everyone is really the way to do it, not to pick winners and losers and try to play this class warfare. We really need to take less money from government and leave more in the private sector, because, as I've said before, we do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Right, exactly. So if you want those lower tax rates and so forth, how do you lower spending? I mean, we've looked at the breakdown and the numbers everywhere because of inflation post-COVID. Yes, Medicaid is part of that, but it's really broad-based and it's really hard to make meaningful cuts. Even the DOGE cuts don't add up to that much, and they've been really impactful. So how do you balance things out then? Where do those cuts come from?
Right. So I'll address the Medicaid, because the Democrats really like to try to misstate this thing. Some things we can do there. One, we can put in work requirements. If someone is able-bodied and able to work, they ought to do that. Second, folks who are in the country illegally should not be receiving these benefits. So the numbers vary there, but you're talking hundreds of billions of dollars in those two changes alone, just with that. Then other things you can do is get rid of the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. We know when it came to what DOGE found, yes, DOGE found a lot of things, but also Congress, through its process, is finding other areas where we can get rid of waste. And I serve on the Financial Services Committee. We were given a charge of making $1 billion in cuts. We actually came in with $5 billion in a painless way. So if we do that and we do our job, we're going to be able to make the necessary cuts and make sure we lower these taxes.
If the timeline slips, and again, now with pressure from the right on this over the deficit issues, if this timeline slips past Memorial Day, it probably goes to July 4th or to, I don't know if it slips all the way to Labor Day, you start to get a little uncomfortably close to that deadline. And the sooner it passes, the sooner, I know some are hoping, you get some stimulus into the economy to offset the tariff hit. So in North Carolina, how are your constituents doing?
So my constituents, one, are supporting the president with what he's trying to do and supporting our efforts to try to move forward with the extension of these tax cuts. I want to see us get it done, not like everybody else, sooner rather than later. But I think that we stay here till we get the work done. And I think we have the conversations, we get through it. And if you get really down to it, a lot of the differences aren't that different, particularly within our conference. And I'm really hopeful some Democrats, some of the more moderate Democrats, will join us in voting for this.
Do you think the midterms are lurking larger than ever for folks? I mean, it's the political reality of this system is that if they feel vulnerable, then it's going to be harder for people to come together and on a deal and get this done.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a fair assessment. But I think what we have to do is we have to have the discipline to understand that a lot of this is long term. Look, we didn't get as a country in the mess of where we are with deficits and where we are on the trade issue overnight. This has been decades in the making. But what's really great is there's a a serious effort by the folks just up the hill here in Capitol Hill to turn this around, to actually say, okay, let's get rid of waste. Let's make reforms. I mean, think about it. Yeah. When was the last time you heard this much discussion and like in a pointed way about government waste?
No,